Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I am Brigid Burke and it is the 15th of September. It's a Sunday and I'm up. I was up reasonably early today, probably a little before 6, and started with my coffee. I got to see the very nice sunrise this morning. It's been getting very warm during the day, so probably about 80 degrees, which is like, I think for people in the UK or other places that use centigrade, it's probably like around 25, 28. But so that's quite warm. But then at night it's been getting down a little bit more. Good morning, Alex. It's been getting a little bit chillier at night, which is good. So I'm kind of back and forth. I really need to find something to get my adrenals in check, because the temperature, my body temperature, like with menopause, it's like the temperature thing just doesn't work. So like I'll drink a cup of hot coffee and then it's like I'm really hot, and then it's like then I cool down, and then it's like so I literally always, every night I keep like a blanket at the end of my bed, and I start out with like no covers, and then it's like gradually as the night gets colder I add things, but then I throw them off again because I get hot again. It's really annoying. So anyway, yeah. So we're at the 15th already, and I have, yesterday was a day where I actually spent most of the day writing. I kind of was inspired. There's a story I've been writing, and I've talked a lot about it on Catonia. It's kind of another Hades Persephone kind of remix in a way, but it was just something that was inspired. But I feel like, just like with the Morrigan, with my novels about the Morrigan, I feel like she kind of influenced the way that those, it's the way she influences the way that those novels go. Similarly now, I feel like Azrael is trying to influence the way these novels go. And because they've taken a very, very, the way that I want to construe the plot and the setting and everything is now very different. And I'm kind of like, this feels like Azrael. This feels like Azrael. And he more or less said, yeah, that I'm pushing it in this direction. So we'll see where it ends up, and if it's something that ends up anywhere besides my laptop, if I end up doing anything with it. But I have a long way to go with it before it could go anywhere. But I did write about 6 or 7 chapters yesterday, and then there were some pieces where I kind of got ahead of myself, so I have to kind of refigure that. But so yes, anyway, point being, I spent a lot of time yesterday doing some writing, and I'll probably want to spend some time today. But good morning, Pat. But I have quite a bit to do today. I have, one of the first things I have to do is, for everybody taking the intuitive development class tonight, I have to usually I send out the tickets. The people who have paid for 10 weeks, I have to send the tickets out, and I need to send the Zoom link out. And so I'm probably I meant to do that yesterday. I usually do it the day before. So I'll have to do it this morning. I mean, we have time. It's at 4 o'clock this afternoon, Eastern time. So we will do that. And I just got to make sure I have all the materials together for that class, because this is going to be not going to be so much talking in this class. It's going to be more practical. Actually, the whole intuitive development class is meant to be practical. It's not meant to be, there is some theoretical stuff that we talk about, but it's really meant to kind of give some background and then kind of like get into it. So we're going to mostly get into that today. With the whole remote viewing thing, I said, we'll all be CIA employees after that, right? But I think Joanne was joking about that on the podcast the other day. But it's really just kind of about the way in which we can place ourselves, the way in which we are able to see things that are just kind of beyond what our boundaries are, and kind of experimenting and practicing with that. And it's one of those things where it's I don't know, it kind of goes two ways. I think there certainly could be some ethical things about doing something like remote viewing, which is hence the reason that the whole CIA program was so controversial. And some people would say that, it can't be done, but I have seen it done. I think one of the last places I saw people talk about remote viewing was on Kindred Spirits, because it was Chip Coffey, who was the psychic medium. I think everybody's heard of Chip Coffey. He's actually one of probably 3. Good morning, Joanne. He's probably actually one of 3 psychic mediums on TV that I think is legit. Cindy Case was another one. And I'm not remembering the third right now, but I know that there's there's a few of them who I think are legit. And he was like doing a lot of the 3rd season because he had a sick relative at home from his house in Georgia. So a lot of times they would be at a site and they would say, Chip, can you do remote viewing? And so he would kind of put himself in the place and tell them what he saw. So about what's going on and what he saw in terms of as a medium of as spirit activity and stuff like that. So, I mean, remote viewing doesn't have to be used for nefarious purposes. Obviously, you don't want to use it to go stalk and spy on people and things like that. You know, there is actually a whole section of this course on that we're going to talk about the ethics of certain types of intuitive practice when it comes to reading for and about other people. If somebody says to you, "Oh, I want to know, I like this guy. I want to know what he thinks." It's like, well, what's the ethical line there about how you can delve into somebody without their permission? Like, there's all kinds of things about that we will talk about. But it's, but yeah. So I've got that to take care of today, and I have I have the class tonight, and I have a client this afternoon. So the afternoon will be completely booked up. So this morning, not only do I have to finish cleaning my house, I did part of it yesterday. I have to get on to the readings because I meant to actually do like at least half of the readings yesterday, and I didn't. And I really don't want to spend Monday doing them. So, because I've already got the 2 live streams, and I really would like to have like for the most part a day off. You know, I mean, I don't mind doing the live streams, but a day where I'm just relaxing. I also got the podcast done yesterday, and including audio and video. So that's got to go up on Patreon this morning, and then we'll go up for the others tomorrow. So good morning. So yeah. So we have. So there's all this. So I've got all of these things that are going on today. Now it was interesting. I had a weird thing this morning. Now, really, my topic today, just to kind of frame this just to the start, has to do with community and ideas of community. Because one of the messages that a lot of us are getting lately is that we are moving away from this. Obviously, we want to deal with self-care and focusing on the self, but we're also focusing on the self so that we can better interact with the community. You know, it's not. Certainly the future is getting more towards more of a community focus more than the other extreme of focusing on the self, which is just how much can I grab for myself and step on other people. You know, that's kind of what, unfortunately, a lot of things have become. And certainly the messages that I get not only from Azrael, but it's not just me. I've been watching some other messages and some other readers and astrologers, and basically they're saying a lot of the same thing. We're moving towards a space where we have to be more about the collective rather than just what's in it for me, you know, that kind of a way of thinking. So we're seeing this kind of shift. So then the question becomes like, okay, well, what does it mean when we talk about moving towards a community model rather than an individual model? Because mythologically, we have been in an individual model for ages. And it kind of ties in with the readings I did this morning. Because when I get up in the morning, I always do a reading for myself, usually a cartouche reading I'll do for myself. And then I will do my Azrael. Usually he's the one who has the message for me. I mean, I have other guides, but he's usually the one right now who's like front and center, and he keeps wanting to talk about things. And I had something that kind of came into my mind this morning about what is the differences between Samael and Azrael. Because they're both couched as the angel of death, right? That's the way that they're discussed in both Judaic and Islamic literature, as in terms of what they are. Maybe even in Christian literature as well. Particularly, I feel like Samael is mentioned more than Azrael. But my understanding is and again, there seems to be kind of a mixed view on these two, because Samael is sometimes like there's a much later Judaic interpretation that says, oh, he's the leader of Satan's and he's this and that. And I'm like, well, that's only something that you're saying because what he does is perceived as evil because it's destructive. Okay, and so that gets into the whole idea of creation and destruction. You know, I talk about this with the dark feminine as well. Just because something is destructive doesn't make it evil. I mean, yeah, we may not like it. It may not, because a lot of people think if they have destruction in their life, they may say, oh, look, I'm cursed, or some terrible thing is happening. And it's like, no, you're not necessarily cursed. I mean, it's not impossible that those things happen, but I just think it's far rarer than people think, in terms of cursing and that sort of stuff. So for the most part, that's probably not what's going on. I'd probably say it's a very small percentage of cases where that might legitimately be something that you'd have to think about. But what I feel is that because sometimes things fall apart around us and they dissolve because it's time for them to go. And if we have been getting the messages as we go along, like, it's probably a good idea to change this or to think about this differently or to make a change, and we go, yeah, yeah, sure, right, change, sure, I'll get to it. And then we don't. And so, it's the old expression of, if you don't make the change, the universe will make it for you. And a lot of times we don't like that because we want to be the one in control of the situation. Of course, frequently we're not. And that's kind of the point here. Now, weirdly, it was just kind of popping into my mind today, thinking about Azrael versus Samael, because, one of the questions that I have is I say, okay, well, like an episode like Passover, for example, which is connected to when the angel of death flies over. Anybody who has the blood of the lamb on their lamppost or whatever gets passed over. That was in the era of the Exodus, right, with Moses, where they say, okay, this is the angel of death sends this plague on Egypt. And so I said, well, is that Azrael or is that Samael? And he says, and he actually said, no, that's my job. I was like, oh, okay. But he had said, yeah, this is kind of, he said, it's kind of, there's some overlap between what he does and what Samael does. But he said Samael's work, he feels, is closer to the earth plane, at least right now. But it's not evil work. Everybody's kind of working in partner to dissolve things that need to be dissolved at this point. He said it's not about torturing and mercilessly picking on people. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with when it's time for something to go, it's like it wrenches it out of your hands and says, okay, it's time to go. And we may be very, very resentful or feel that loss or feel that. But he said, but that's sometimes it's about that. It's when that overwhelming force comes in and takes things out. And this also works in hand in hand with aspects of the dark feminine as well. What we think of as connected to, say, Kali in Hindu mythology, who represents this dissolution. But again, connected with the factor of dissolution is also the factor of creation. In Kabbalah, when you have the tree of life, the lower part of the tree tends to deal with what's manifest. Okay, it has to do with Malkut is at the bottom. That's the word for kingdom, and that has to do with the kind of the plane that we exist in. And you have Hod and Netzah on either side, which represent intellect and emotion, and then you have Yesod, kind of a middle, the sphere of the moon, which tends to be more of the intuition factor. That's the simple way that I talk about those lower Sephirot. And then you have Tiferet, which we talked about yesterday, the Tiferet point, where when somebody has arrived there and then they think they're a messiah and they think, oh, I've arrived, now you all have to follow me. It's like, no, that's not the point. But people reach that point. And then the point all above, the upper part of the tree, right next to Tiferet, is the abyss that you can fall down into, Dot, which is the abyss, usually considered the realm of Saturn astrologically. But then you have all these sephirots. You have mercy and severity, and then you have Bina and Hokmah, which are these kinds of masculine and feminine elements. Bina often associated with, in some things, with what they call Babylon, or again the idea of dissolution. This crushing of the ego and this crushing of because there's a dissolving of the identity. Okay, that's what happens in those upper Sephirot. It's a dissolving of the identity as you move towards non-manifestation. Keter and the areas above it, that's the limitless light. These are unmanifest areas out of which things manifest, right? So this is when things become unmanifest. It's all part of the same tree. There's manifest and there's unmanifest. So that's kind of what he's talking about. He said these are the energies that they have are more of these higher Sephirot kind of energies that are more about dissolution. And the way in which that, you have these balances of masculine and feminine, balances about what's just and perhaps what's unjust, and how one deals with what's just and what's unjust. It's that kind of energy that we see, when we get above the Tiferet area. But yeah, so anyway, that's just probably the easiest metaphor that I could conceive of in my mind for what he was talking about this morning. But he had just said, yeah, he said he says basically the way he put it to me was, what's the actual Enochian words? It was, it was Lap, Balet, Babylon, Knilla. I am the truth of I am the truth of the dissolution of life. Okay, so that's basically the way that he explained it. I'm the truth of the dissolution of life. So, and that's just and like I said, I think he and I work very closely together because my focus is on transitions. When things in your life have ended, and it's like, okay, so things have ended, you're in the gap, you don't know where you are. Like, okay, how do you find your way forward now? Or how do you sit with where you are and try to figure things out? You know, what tools do you have to move forward now that the old way is done? Okay, and that's probably at least one very big reason why he comes to me and says, hey, you know, I want to work through you because you're about trying to move people through, you know, getting rid of the old and moving into the new. And that's kind of what I've always felt called to do. And a lot of this has to do with embracing things that a lot of times that, you know, make people uncomfortable. Because one thing we don't want to stay in our states of toxic positivity or just kind of this, you know, this kind of masking or spiritual bypassing that we do to things that, even in psychoanalysis and psychology, I was thinking about that today too, because a lot of what the science now of psychology has a lot to do with, you know, the chemicals that we use to control interactions in the brain. Because the assumption is that, oh, well, we feel anxiety or we feel, you know, depression or we feel certain things just because of our brain activity. Now, our brain certainly does produce a chemical reaction to all of those things. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And these drugs can help somebody who really feels, you know, who really feel like they can't function, you know, that these drugs can actually help people. I'm not one of those people who says that these drugs never have a place and nobody should ever use them. That said, I don't know that they should be the default. I think sometimes sometimes the symptom, I mean, again, when people in very, very severe cases, yes, I think, yeah, I mean, no question that is needed. With certain types of trauma. But at the same time, I think sometimes when there's traumas that are intense, but maybe not quite at that level, there's a tendency to want to kind of cure the symptom that way, when the symptom may actually be something that's pushing you towards that change or towards looking at something new. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. Good morning, Sam. So I have mixed feelings about like how those things are used. In my pharma class, they said only 10% of the cases require medication. Yeah, and you know what? Yes, and I believe that. I think that there's a lot of cases where it shouldn't be used. Drugs can bypass the feelings we sometimes need to work through. That was my expression, but agreed. Right, exactly. And it's different. I mean, again, there's some people I know who have had to be on certain... But okay, I guess the one thing people can agree on is that I don't think anybody necessarily wants to be on those drugs for life. Okay? That's where I think I want to go with that. People don't want to be on those drugs for life. They might say, yes, there's a period of time where I need those drugs, and then eventually you get weaned off of those drugs because you can't just stop taking them. But I think most people agree they don't want to be on those drugs for life. Now, sometimes, again, depending on what's happening, they might have to be, or they might at least have to be adjusted depending on what it is, like certain forms of bipolar disorder and things like that, or certain types of schizophrenia and so forth. That may be literally what that person's tether is to reality. But again, I think even in cases of severe depression, the idea is to try to help you, move through that space and eventually, reach a place where you're not experiencing that anymore. So yeah, and I think there's always something too that we always think that there's always the idea, we always talk about the magic pill, right? Whatever ails me, whether it be mental, my daughter was never medicated hard work, but she deals with her Asperger's and ADHD without meds now. Yeah, I mean, it is manageable. It is possible. And again, everybody's an individual case as to how that would work. So I don't, So, but in certain cases, you can learn to do that. But I just don't like a neuropsychology that says that this is the only way that you can manage it. It's like, no, and maybe they don't say that. They may also talk about therapy, but cognitive forms of therapy, again, because they're so focused on the mind and on rational processes. Well, yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it varies. What I'm saying is it varies. I know some people who have told me that they never would have gotten through anything without the heavy drugs. Like they never would have gotten through certain things. And so they're even though they're also, but they also agree, I don't really want to be on those for the rest of my life. And in some cases they have gone off of them. And it's that's the thing that people want to get to. And and I think it's great that she can manage those things without it. And I remember I had a mythology class once where I had a whole bunch of students, we were talking about this topic, about whether, again, whether medication's needed or not. I'm always very careful about what I say about that, because I don't want to suggest that, if you're on it, somehow you're bad or you're weak, which is completely not the case. I mean, some people need to be on it. But I was literally just talking about how a lot of times, that's the thing too, like in early childhood ed, what ends up happening is there's these teams that evaluate kids, and people say, oh, well, that's better because it helps their learning process. Maybe. I mean, I'm sure there's some good that does, but I feel like that also, I have other friends who are saying well, no, I don't want a label put on my kid from an early age. And then they feel like they're always identified by that label. Oh, you're this, you're that. And some of the ages at which they identify some of these issues make me wonder, what's happened to developmental psychology. It's for example, the case of somebody, and this was the person I think was the president of the APA. There was a kid who was 3 or 4 years old, and was put on certain drugs that were really meant for ADHD because they were too social. I'm like, that's the age when they're supposed to be learning how to be social. Why are you suppressing this kid's social, tendency at that age? That doesn't make sense to me. Even if he talks a lot, it's oh, you talk too much, here, let's put you on drugs. That doesn't make any sense to me. But they defended that kid died actually. And that's why it came up. And so they had said, but they defended the head of the APA, saying no, they acted completely within the norm. And I'm like, well, if that's the norms of it, I don't. Yeah, I feel like it's something that's over relied on. It's the first thing that they go to, rather than kind of looking at the big picture. And so that's where I kind of get about that kind of stuff. I know for me, with my driving anxiety, I was recommended that I take something for that so that, I could, I mean, it's tempting to say I wanted to do that, but when I started the anti-anxiety meds, for me, they literally did zero, nothing. I made the decision carefully and I was on top. Yeah, absolutely. And certainly, you're qualified to make the decision and you're doing the one that's right. My mid students, they were all jumping up telling me what they were on. I'm like, okay, I wasn't trying to expose anybody's, medical background, because really it was none of my business. But they all wanted to tell me about the drugs they were on and how they felt about them, which was really interesting. I was like, okay, as long as you're comfortable sharing. I mean, I wasn't asking for anybody to share, but as long as you're comfortable sharing, because that's you have HIPAA laws and stuff. I mean, that's people's own business what they're taking. But it's but yeah, I mean, there's this sense here of when I was taking these anti-anxiety meds, they literally did nothing. Xanax did nothing for me, absolutely not. Not even make me tired, nothing. Percocet was like that too. You'd have surgery and they give you that as a painkiller afterwards. It does nothing. On top of it. However, I always told her once she was old enough, she could choose to go on, but I wanted her mind and body to develop fully. Yeah, and I think that's a really smart and sane way to go about it. To say, okay, this is what we're doing this is how we're going to do it, but you do, when you're an adult, you can make your own decisions, right? Yeah, you don't need people making them for you. And yeah, my thing is too, I don't see any reason why those things can't change over time. I get all these, things in from students. I've had students who have told me, oh yeah, I've been diagnosed as this and this, and so I'm really, I need more time on tests, I'm not good with this and that. And then I sit down and I watch these students do the work, and I'm like, they're perfectly capable of doing the work within the time period allotted. And they also, some of them are really excellent students. They're really, and they're saying, well, I was told that I'm not very good academically. And I'm like, who told you that? Who told you that? They're lying to you. Who told you that? Because some of these kids were really, really good and were doing things really the right way. And things that make people sleep make me hyper. Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes people have the reverse. For me, everything makes me sleep. Everything in the world makes me sleep. Even uppers, even things that are meant to make you stay awake, make me sleep. I would make a terrible drug addict. I don't, which I guess is the upshot. I would never be taking drugs. And the thing is, I have never gone on antidepressants because I already know, I've taken pharma classes. I know about what all the side effects are. And, and it's, but with my doctor, but people I know, like, who have told me that I can drink espresso and go to bed. Yeah, me too, pretty much. I'm so caffeine addicted. I don't even know that it really makes any difference, right? It's scary. Yeah, but the thing is, I just found that everything, and I was not convinced that antidepressants were going to help me because, first of all, they take a long time to take effect. They take like 6 to 8 weeks. It takes a while. I think they say maybe 3 weeks is the bottom thing, where you have to see whether or not they're actually helping you. When I was in a situation where I needed immediate relief, waiting 3 weeks or 6 weeks was not going to do it. And I talked to some other people, and again, I'm not naming names or who they are, what walks of life. They were not clients. But they had said to me, yeah, I was put on it for the same thing. And they said, I have to tell you, some days it works and some days it doesn't. And again, that was not encouraging to me because I needed something to work all the time if I was going to be able to continue to go to my job. And then, of course, I tried CBD and THC and all that kind of stuff. And CBD sometimes can be a little relaxing, but I never found it was not relaxing enough. It did not do what I needed it to do. And THC, I wouldn't take that again. That actually makes me, again, I've talked to people who have some of those symptoms, like autism symptoms and things like that. I said, oh, THC is great. It just takes the edge right off. They particularly the Delta gummies and stuff like that. And I took just a portion of a Delta once, and I was like, I was like extremely paranoid and extremely angry. Just as Jenny, she happened to call me during that time, and she was like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And I was like, "It's this THC," and so I never took it again after that because I was just like, "Yeah, no, that's completely not helpful. I can be angry and paranoid right on my own. I don't need anybody to help me with it." So yeah, it's kind of interesting, but anyway, I think my topic today was meant to be. I always kind of derail into something. But I think kind of getting back to what I was saying before about the way in which we're trying to have this broader focus on things. The question becomes, how do we, when we talk about looking at the bigger picture, how do we do that? So, oh, good morning, Leela. So when we talk about the bigger picture, how do we look at the bigger picture? Because we're being told not to focus so much on the ego, what I can grasp for myself, what's mine. If we're being told that, obviously, okay, so first of all, I think there needs to be an understanding of what self-care is. Self-care is something that is, self-care is something that is not, a lot of times we think about it like as having a spa day or doing something like that. That can be a kind of self-care. Good morning, Sudha. That can be a kind of self-care. So it's, and we can do things like that. But self-care is also just understanding, first of all, learning to love ourselves and learning to forgive ourselves. Okay, those are two very, very hard things to do. Again, just kind of like we were talking about with Rahani and kind of the opening of the heart. We say, well, yeah, opening your heart, being vulnerable. Though that's much harder to do than being like, I'm going to be strong and defiant. That's actually easier to do than to say I'm going to be vulnerable and open my heart to people. Much easier to do because we're so used to being wounded, and we all reach a point where we're like, you know what, I'm tired of being wounded. Heck with you. I'm gonna put my foot down and stand my ground, right? Which again, a lot of times that is entirely the appropriate response. You don't want to be a doormat. You don't want people walking over you all the time and stepping on you and putting your needs second. But a lot of times because we're angry about being treated that way, we have that kind of a response. But we may always carry on that kind of response because it doesn't feel safe to go outside of it. All right. So so that confidence in yourself and who you are is really a big first step to being able to do anything else. To be able to say, yes, I know this is who I am, and regardless of what's going on in the external world, I feel solid in who I think I am and what I'm doing. And yes, I have made mistakes, but it's okay that I've made mistakes because everybody makes mistakes. Okay, it's now again. Some people might like ethically start bringing up extreme cases, like, well, should serial killers feel that way? Yeah, I mean, there are outer edges of this. I would say for the vast majority of people, it's just we all have had interactions where probably for the most part, the people we go out into the world without the intention to harm others. Okay, you don't go into the world with the intention to harm others. That's not, we can get angry at people, we can have moments where we want revenge, we can have moments, but again, that's a reaction to a wound. Part of it is just recognizing that in a lot of cases, nobody wounds intentionally. Even someone who just seems like they're a jerk, who wants to like pick at you or heckle you, or that is somebody who is seeing something in you that is aggravating something in them, and really the responsibility is for them to figure out, well, what is it about that person that I'm aggravated, or is it just a control impulse? Sometimes you have people who just want to control other people. And that gets very annoying too, because then it becomes a battle of wills. You're not going to control me, right? And so the question is, when you have people who want to come in, like I'd said about mythologies, if you don't come up with your own mythology, somebody else will impose theirs on you. And so it's a case of fighting for your own individuality and who you are, and not having people impose their stuff on you. But at the same time, keeping an open heart to people. Now that's a really hard balance to strike. And it has to start with believing in yourself, loving yourself, and having faith in whatever it is that you're doing. And those all sound like really kitschy buzzwords to a lot of people, because they go, oh, okay, the balancing the act. Yeah, in other words, even just understanding that there are going to be people on the outside of you who are going to treat you like crap, or people who are not going to like you, or people who are not going to, I don't know, like some viewpoint that you have, just are gonna, especially if you're on social media and you have a YouTube channel and stuff, there are always gonna be people gonna trash you and tell you you're stupid and this and that, and you just kind of go, okay. And it does. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna pretend like, oh, none of that ever bothers me. There's days when I'm just like, what I want to write back is like not very polite. But at the same time, then I just say to myself, well, I have a lot of Mars energy. I have to kind of rein in. So I'm like, okay, well, in the context of things, how important is this? How important is this person and their opinion to you? And why do you, because you never notice that? You could have 50 people give you a nice comment and one person says a negative thing, and that's the only thing you focus on. Because we fundamentally, a lot of times we're taught not to like ourselves. We're taught not to, yes, I hear you, yeah. We're taught that somehow there's something inherently flawed about us, and we should be, we have some reason to feel shame about who we are. And it's like, well, no. And I mean, and again, to say that you're not feeling shame, there was a discussion the other day I was watching of Dana Bash, who's on CNN. She has a book she wants to do on shame and having no shame. And there are cases where maybe people should have shame and they don't, is what her point was. In terms of but that again, that gets back to, okay, there's you, and you need to take care of you and know what your purpose is, or I don't even like the word purpose, because to me, I agree with Campbell that life doesn't have a purpose. Like he says, what's the meaning of a flower? What's the meaning of a flea? It doesn't mean anything. It's just there. It just is. We make, because of our consciousness and because of the kind of creative way we have, we interact with that consciousness, we create things. We are manifestors, we are creators, and a lot of times we don't do that. We pull back from it because somehow we feel like and that's where we get it. I talked a lot about how people always have problems with voice. It's like trying to express your voice, trying to express who you are. And sometimes, only having to focus on what's important, and, all these things you want to express are somehow not as important as, I don't know, go sitting behind a desk all day so that you can make money. And it's, and I mean, understood, we need money to function in this world. Another big illusion that we function with, but you do, practically speaking. But it's also, who are we authentically? Authentically, frequently, we are not the job that we do if we're working for someone. We might be. I mean, it might tie in with us and who we are and what we want to do. Or even, even if it's a job that's not something we want to do, or that we consider to be our true passion, you can still express who you are in a job. There's still, I always feel like there's always something that can be a positive expression there. But first, I think that's why I think a lot of people are being told, like I'm getting a lot of first house cards, focus on getting yourself together. And because then also, if you're aware of what's going on with yourself, you don't project it onto other people. Or if you are projecting it, because in a way we can't really help doing that, you know that you're doing it. You know that you're doing it. You see it and you go, okay, and again, that doesn't mean you have to sit there and say, bad person, you projected onto this person. That's not what we're saying. It's just recognizing that when you feel very strongly about something, I've had days like that where I will get so irrationally angry about something and I'm like, why am I not, maybe irrationally is not the word, all anger is irrational, right? But just to the point where it just seems like it's overkill. And so I'm saying, well, why do I feel, what am I, and now sometimes, just talking about chemicals, sometimes I think it is chemical. Sometimes when I have certain hormonal drops, somehow, something that kind of can buffer that gets thrown away and I feel almost like, okay, but then I recognize that, I'm like, oh, given all the other symptoms, the headaches I'm getting and this and that, it's probably connected to that. But it can also be telling us, I can also look at it and say, okay, what is if I'm continually focused on this and bothered by this, then maybe I need to see, like, was there something in my past? Was there something here that this is triggering in a way? And that's what we want to look for and say, and that's what I think Rahani does, because a lot of people will do Rahani and then they'll all of a sudden recall things from certain periods of time and go, oh, that thing, I forgot about that thing. I haven't thought about that thing. And you find that he's kind of like trying to say that's the thing. That's the thing. Or at least that's a prime example of the thing. And so once we do that, then you're able to negotiate the outside world in a better way. Because first of all, you won't necessarily always react from a perspective of of wounding, which means you're always on the defense, right? Because you reach that kind of point where whatever people say about you is what they're going to say about you. Not everybody's going to love what you do. Not everybody is going to accept you for what you are and what you're doing. And a lot of times, we run into that in families and stuff like that. And that's probably one of the hardest things because we think those are the people who should be accepting you, right? But not frequently, no. So, you have to figure out like what is authentically you. We talked about that the other day, separating you from what other people in the sense of, okay, what are my thoughts? Join late. This is spot on. When do I have to figure out what's authentic to me? And even if my family, these other people don't like it, it's still something that I say, well, no, but that's authentic to me. And that's who I am. And it's not that we have to convince people of what we are. It's just, we just need to be what we are. And we have to accept that not everybody's going to like, because we live in a world, if everybody just accepted everything everybody else did, I don't know. That would be, on the one hand, you might say, well, gee, that would be great. On the other hand, it's just kind of like, well, we still have these judgments about, and in society, you have to have judgments about there has to be some boundaries that are set, right? That's where rules come from. There's some level of boundaries, some level of structure. But beyond that, but when it comes to people's personal lives and choices and creativity and things like that, there shouldn't be this. We don't live in an environment that's conducive to that. I'm going to actually start doing our reading because we're getting late. But I was watching Livestream that I like to watch last night, and somebody asked the question asked this person whose Livestream I watch about about one-hit wonders, like about musicians who get one big hit and then you never hear from them again. And his response I thought was really, really good, because he had said, well, if you make your first album, he said, you might have been playing with a band for 10 years and you have your ideas, these songs, this material, you're comfortable with this material, and you can bang the album out in a short period of time. If you sign a record deal and they say, right, well, you've got 6 months to make another album. He said, that's not always the way creativity works. You can't just be like, right, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to force myself to be creative. Now, some people can do that. There's people who write, say, for late night or something all the time. They have to come up with new stuff every single day. You have to have a prompt and you got to do it every single day. But not everybody can do that. Creativity is like, it's like love and a lot of these other things. Sometimes it's something that just kind of comes in and then it kind of floats away. And when someone sits down Standing ground, better to be manifestors is it conscious living? It is conscious living. Yeah, well, that's what they mean when they talk about living consciously, or living, I know my friend Ellen hates this word, living mindfully. Yeah, that's kind of what I talked about the other day about kind of being in that. Yes, this is how I feel about my creativity. It's not ever present. Right, it's not. It's something that kind of floats in and out, and the more that we try to control it, it's like a lot. That's why they always use the butterfly metaphor, right? As soon as you see the little butterfly, as soon as you trap it and like stick it in a box and put pins in it, now you've killed it, right? I mean, you can't. You have to kind of let it, float around and come to you. But this is why I think a lot of times in human design, it's like, wait for the invitation, wait for it to come, wait for the thing to come to you. And we're all like, no, I can't wait. I have to aggressively go after that thing. And so our lives all come about defense and control. And it's like, well, and again, I'm as guilty of this as anybody. And I don't even think guilty is the right word. This is just how our society has worked. And the question is, I think as part of the change, if we're going to be looking at being in community, that's not how we have to see it. There has to be allowance for a flow. I think that's too, when I get up certain days and I have a list and I get frustrated because I can't complete the list, sometimes it's because that creativity is coming in and it's like, hey, put things down right now because you're creative, And yeah, interesting reading today. Our center card, standing and flowing, it's a balancing act. Yeah, it's a balancing, it's that figure 8, that Leminskit, it's that moving between different things. But then if we look at the community, that's the other thing too, in a very capitalist society, and I'm not saying this is anti-capitalism because my own economic view probably stands somewhere between capitalism and socialism, okay? But in this capitalistic kind of view, we have this idea that, it's competition and you gotta beat the other guy, you gotta make more than the other guy and get a rank above that person. And I don't know. I've always looked at things like, okay, if I know other people in my community who are doing good things, like, I think we need to help each other, promote each other, It's like that Zohar thing with the long-handled spoons where, when people couldn't reach the food with those long-handled, with the long chains on their wrists, and so they're starving to death, but as soon as they feed each other, everybody's fed, I always feel like, no, we should be in a community of support of each other, not trying to tear each other down. But that's frequently the way that we have, the dog-eat-dog thing, right? The Lovers is our first card here. So again, this is about connection. This is about choices that we make, but I think, again, in this particular deck, this is really about connection at the higher level. And I'm using the word higher again. At the level that is more deeper, that is more intense, that not love that might be for that might be more about an agenda, let's say. I would say that this has more to do with that unconditional love, not only of self, but of others. This can have to do with the love that and any interactions that we have with other people as well. Now, the inner feeling of which we're unaware, with the Lovers, we have aloneness, okay? Now, the meaning of the aloneness card is not about being lonely. It's not about that. Aloneness, as you see, this is a little kind of he's kind of like looks like a kind of Tibetan monk of some kind, or at least some kind of a monk who, and you see the light that's glowing from him. So in other words, that's exactly what I just said. You need to be a light unto yourself first. You need to be a light unto yourself first, because you'll be capable of this when you have this, okay? Because that's another thing people will do too. Like, people say, I don't understand how you can spend all this time alone. I don't understand how you can sit in silence. But that's another thing that you want to be able to do. If you're comfortable with yourself, then you can be comfortable with other people. It's not like, some people are introverted and prefer their own company, but you can get more of that inward-outward balance, listening to source without the noise of the world. Yeah, and that's something that meditation does. That's cacophony. Yeah, aloneness equals hermit. Yes, that's right, exactly. This is card 9. Yes, so this is that Virgo energy. We're actually moving out of Virgo space very, very soon. But really, I see this card as, because the Hermit, you can interpret the Hermit, and I love me some Leela. Yes, as you should. As you absolutely should, because you are an incredibly talented individual. And so this aloneness, just kind of being able to make time to be by yourself. And again, I think this is especially something women suffer with, because women are often told, we're often perceived in a community, but that's kind of the paradox. In order to be able to be in a community, you also have to be able to be alone. You also have to know how to be alone. Because again, that's where you reach that space where, yeah, if you have self-love, then when you project yourself outward, that's what you see everywhere. You know what I mean? That's what you see. That's when you're able to see the best in people. And you convey that. Let me tell you, when you are in a space where you are really radiating that, I've had days when I have been in a really foul mood, and I have had days like post Rahani when I'm like glowing. And if I have to go like to the grocery store or something like that, let me tell you, the reactions of people to me, you see the different, they see it in you. And they react accordingly. So they could have been grumping along, and then their face lights up if they see that your face is lit up. We reflect that back at each other, you know? So yeah, it's important to be able to, it's like I said, important to be able to have that light come from yourself, and then you'll be able to relate to the people. The external feeling, of which we're aware, which is kind of interesting, is the Master card, okay? So this is the extra card in the Osho Zen deck. My lane versus not my lane while staying connected. Yeah, and it takes some time. You know, what is, a lot of times with people, it's kind of like, yeah, like yielding control is a really, really hard thing, because we are always told that we must always be in control. You know, we must always be in control all the time. And the paradox is that in order to gain control, you have to yield it. Okay, that's one of those things. What was it put in the Book of Runes? He says relinquishing control is the biggest challenge, is the greatest challenge of the spiritual warrior. And that's why I think I'm very death focused too, because to focus on death means we just yield to life and accept it as it is, including that part of it, that we yield to whatever life is bringing us. That's yielding is a quote unquote feminine attribute. It's with a capital F. It's yielding to what things are bringing, rather than constantly trying to say, no, but I have to come in and I have to fix this. And you manifest things by yielding. It's interesting. Yes. So the Master is about suggesting that we have guidance through this. Okay. That there is a master, that there is one who is enlightened, who's guiding us through the process. Right. And, so to me, that would suggest on a, you know, rather than on individual, this reading being for me, which it's not, it's supposed to be for everybody. This says that the Master is saying that it's almost like we're moving in a space that's being guided. We're being guided in the right direction. I guess that's the way to put it. So we want to get out from behind these walls. We have the Miser. We have the Four of Pentacles. Four of Pentacles is where we kind of want to just stay where we are. We want to keep the wall up, you know, we want to keep all this stuff. But you see this woman she looks very unhappy and very ugly. You know, it's like, what is the fortress? What are we trying to keep from other people? Where's the fortress, right? So this is a card about, when the Four of Pentacles comes up, it can indicate in more traditional decks that you are trying to achieve some kind of stability, which is the upside of it. But this is also like, then we build these structures that just keep people out. And it's saying, you know, what you want to, you know, it's another version of tear down that wall, right? Anybody who was around in 1989 and remembers that Reagan speech, right? Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. But yeah, it's about tearing down the wall. And ultimately, this card's come up again for us, slowing down. So we're being slowed down because there's something that's happening right now that is very, there definitely is something happening that is not just necessarily global, but maybe universal. There's something happening right now. There's some kind of shift going on. And it's saying just slow down and yield to what the shift is, because don't try to hang on to what was in the past, because you'll be shifting into the space that you need to go. Mabel, there's Mabel. Yes, Mabel. That's a reference to our one of our intuitive development classes, where Joanne we were looking for spirit guides and stuff, and Joanne was seeing some animals and she saw a turtle, and the turtle's called Mabel. So it's so that's, which is actually a perfect name for a turtle, really. But yeah, it's this so it's this idea that we are moving into this space of just, you know, it's basically saying, again, we keep being told, slow down, You've been hearing this from me for probably the last 2 weeks. Slow down, slow down. And again, I'm questioning it probably as much as some of you do. I'm like, why do I need to slow down? You know how much stuff I got to get done? The semester started, and I got a school I'm opening, and this is happening, and that's happening. It's like, slow down. And it was weird because I did slow down yesterday, and I took some time to do my writing, which, is the quote-unquote unimportant stuff, right? But I actually got a lot more done yesterday than I had expected. So, yeah, and what's the card I pulled for today? Surrender to the Divine, right? Full moon card. And actually, again, and full moon in Pisces. Okay, that's interesting too, because we're about to have a full moon in Pisces, and I almost feel like it's saying, wait for it, wait for it. Something's coming. And of course, yes, this is balanced spirituality and practicality. That's the meaning of this particular card. But yeah, surrender to the divine. There's whatever's going on right now. It's basically it's the universe saying, trust us. You don't have to race around frantically to try to accomplish this and do that. You'll see what's coming. It's kind of like, so I say it's the wait for it, wait for the starting gun and then you can go. So yeah, interesting kind of stuff here. But I think as we're moving into a space, if we're moving from this old Capricornian energy into this Aquarian energy, and we have to focus on just chill. Yeah, exactly. Which is so easy for all of us to do, right? We're all people who are so just easily take it as it comes, right? Yeah, we're all kind of like, it's just kind of, yeah. We always I don't know. I was raised with kind of like, I always feel like I should be doing something, and if I'm not doing something, what am I doing? Yeah, exactly. We're all such chill people. But yeah, and then because when we do chill, we find that's when the worry starts to come in. We start to find space to go, oh, I'm not doing anything. Well, what if this happens? What if I can't make this by this date? What if I can't do this? What if I can't do that? And the brain just goes nuts, and then we start feeling like, okay, I got to scramble and do something. And it's like, nah, you don't. And and just being able to relax into the space, into who you are, that's the hardest thing to do. It's a really hard thing to do. And it sounds like it should be easy. It sounds like, yeah, that's great. That's what we're all aiming for in life. But when we actually might have the opportunity to do it, we don't take it. We're just kind of like, no, I got to be doing something else. It's like when people retire and then they're like, well, now I need to get another job. Like there's people who, or like I've seen people like that. Or some people, they will pick up and they might travel and they might do other things. And, but we're always doing something. I guess one thing I always admired about my dad was the way that he could, and again, I can't do what he did, but when he retired, he literally, my mother was only trying to find stuff for him to do, which he would do, but he was like, he just wanted to sit on the back porch with his iced tea and his pipe or his cigar until he started getting pneumonia, and then he stopped doing that. And he just wanted to sit and just, look at the yard. He just wanted to people watch. He'd sit in the front porch and watch people go down the street, and then you come home and you go, oh yeah, this person went down there and they did this. He just wanted to just sit there and enjoy just his stuff. And I was like, for a guy who was, I don't know, there's a lot of things that he maybe should have thought about but didn't. For a guy who was, traveled and was a mechanic and stuff, he just kind of had this real Zen approach to things. It was just like, what? I don't want to go. I don't want to fix the plumbing under the bathroom sink. I just want to sit here and watch the world go by. I want to enjoy it a little bit. And, and I'm glad he got those moments to do that. Because, Anyway, we're well past time right now. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate everybody who joins in, especially on a Sunday morning. If you're all up, that's, we're all troopers here with our coffee. I'll be back tomorrow morning. Those of you taking intuitive development, I will actually have the links for you today. Oh, you're welcome. And and so I forgot to send those out yesterday. I'm going to send that out, and I'm going to send a separate email with the links just to make sure. Oh, you are welcome, and I'm looking forward to seeing you later this week too. That's going to be awesome. And so we are, so we'll do that, and so onward anyway. Before I start devolving into something else, I will see you all later. Take care.